This election comes down to a few basic things. Either you're for the Constitution or you're not. Either you're for capitalism or you're not. And that's the bottom line. Somehow I think not all, but most Americans are with us on these issues if they're framed properly. The Democrats are completely out of control because the government's out of control and they're one and the same thing. They have no intention of pulling back from the precipice. None. Tax increases, spending increases, debt ceiling increases, over and over. So they have to trash the Constitution, and now they're openly doing it. Back to the managing editor of Time magazine, Richard Stengel. If you subscribe to this, I mean, you're really crazy. He goes, nor are we in danger of flipping the Constitution on its head, as some of the Tea Party faithful contend. Their view of the founding document was pretty much well summarized by Texas Congressman Ron Paul back in 2008. He said the Constitution was written explicitly for one purpose, to restrain the federal government. Well, not exactly, he writes. In fact, the framers did the precise opposite. They strengthened the center and weakened the states. The states had extraordinary power under the Articles of Confederation, he said. Most of them had their own navies and their own currencies. The truth is the Constitution massively strengthened the central government of the U.S. for the simple reason that it established one where none had existed before. It didn't massively strengthen it. Folks, if they wanted to massively strengthen and create a federal government, then the Constitution would be about 4 sentences long. There wouldn't be a 9th and 10th Amendment. There wouldn't be enumerated powers. They created a central government because they felt it would help promote liberty. Not because they felt it would help promote more government. Do you understand how cockamamie this thinking is? He goes on. If the Constitution was intended to limit the federal government, it sure doesn't say so. He's got to be kidding, right? It sure doesn't say so. This is what I mean. They pretend the 10th Amendment doesn't exist, right? 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Now, why is it that the First Amendment that protects the press is sacrosanct, but the 10th Amendment that protects the states is read right out of the Constitution? Well, I think we know why, don't we? Yes, because they don't believe in the Constitution unless it protects them and what they're doing. So why do we have a free press if we don't have states' rights? Can somebody please tell me? Well, Mark, they're in that order for a specific... No, they're not really, actually. Actually, they spend a hell of a lot more time debating how to protect the states. And as I explained the other day when I was dealing with the idiot from CNN who said basically the same thing here, what's his name? Fareed Kakamami? Oh, Fareed Vakari? Zakari, Vakari, whatever. The Constitution was almost defeated until they got all the amendments, or 10 of the 12, or promised 10 of the 12. Let me regroup. They promised to propose amendments to the states in the first Congress and had agreed to them pretty much in advance. And without them, the Constitution would not have been ratified. This guy doesn't even know his history, has no concept. He says if the Constitution was intended to limit the federal government, it sure doesn't say so. Article 1, Section 8, the longest section of the longest article of the Constitution, is a drum roll of congressional power. And it ends with the necessary and proper clause, which delegates to Congress the power to make all laws that shall be necessary and proper to carry into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or any department or officer thereof. Limited government indeed. He doesn't even understand the necessary and proper clause. They enumerated the powers under Congress. There's a somewhat of a laundry list. They didn't do that to give Congress plenary power, open-ended power. They did it to say, okay, here's what you can do. Everything else you can't do. And then there was a debate at the Constitutional Convention. Okay, great. We've listed these powers, but we still got to kind of make sure that Congress has the power to actually execute these things. And so that's where the necessary and proper clause comes in. The necessary and proper clause, meaning Congress has the power, the necessary and proper power to carry out its enumerated powers, doesn't mean that the necessary and proper clause abolishes the Constitution. Why would they do that? Why would they write the other parts of the Constitution? Why would they include the 9th and 10th Amendment? Now, we know for a fact that the managing editor of Time magazine is wrong. We can go to the Federalist Papers. The founders, they actually explain themselves. James Madison, Federalist 45. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. Gee, it's that simple. You'd think even a liberal mushhead from Time magazine could figure that out. Or what is it? Words have no meaning whatsoever unless they're in Time magazine? We knew exactly what the framers of the Constitution said and those who ratified it said. We know exactly what they meant in terms of the structure of the federal government. They were scared to hell of an all-powerful central government. He goes on. It is true that the framers, like Tea Partiers, boy, do they have contempt for us. Dripping, hateful contempt. Feared concentrated central power more than disorder. They really feared it, ladies and gentlemen, because they understood it. They had just fought a revolution to defeat it. He said they were, after all, revolutionaries. To them, an all-powerful state was a greater threat to liberty than discord and turbulence. Jefferson, like many of the anti-federalists, did think the Constitution created too much centralized power, and yet Jefferson, in the end, supported it, and his friend James Madison. He thought it was the best they could get. He said, most of all, the framers created a weak executive because they feared kings. They created checks and balances to neutralize any concentration of power. This often makes for disorderly government, but it does forestall any one branch from having too much influence. The framers weren't afraid of a little messiness, which is another reason we shouldn't be so delicate about changing the Constitution or reinterpreting it. What? You don't reinterpret the Constitution. Otherwise, it has no meaning. It becomes a political expedient, which is exactly what the left wants. And as for changing the Constitution, they set up an elaborate mechanism for that, an amendment process. One of two ways. A constitutional convention, and God forbid if we have one now, because eggheads like this, somehow, some way, they take the damn convention over. A lot of people are, let's have a constitutional convention. You don't even know what you're asking for. The left would love a constitutional convention. I hear libertarians arguing it for it, too. You know what? I don't think we can do any better than the constitutional convention we have. So, what do you say we just try and enforce the Constitution we have? And, of course, they set up the amendment adoption procedure. Supermajorities of both houses of Congress and super-duper majority of the states. 2/3 of Congress, 3/4 of the states. Now, doesn't that tell you that they wanted to protect the document, by the way? They didn't think you should just rewrite it and change it with the times, right? And by the way, they weren't stuck in the 1700s. They understood what they were doing. Liberty, private property rights, unalienable rights, God-given, the state of nature, those things don't change. That doesn't mean you can't have computers and automobiles and DNA tests and all the rest. They were all for commercial progress, all for technological progress. They were capitalists. They were involved in trade and commercial activity. They supported it. One of the reasons we had the Commerce Clause is because they wanted to promote commerce, not kill it. But he goes on here. Let's see here. It goes on and on, this crap, so I got to cut through it. We can pat ourselves on the back about the past 223 years, writes the managing editor of Time magazine, but we cannot let the Constitution become an obstacle to the U.S.'s moving into the future with a sensible health care system, a globalized economy, an evolving sense of civil and political rights. You see? In other words, for this guy, like most on the left, the Constitution is the socialist agenda. They seek to and I've written all about this, they seek to institutionalize their political agenda and their ideology in the Constitution. That's what they're up to. Oh, yeah, it's got to change with the times. In other words, the Constitution has to bend to the left, and their will. Sensible health care system. We're free to create a sensible health care system under the Constitution. The Constitution leaves it to us to do it, not the government. When I come back, one more whack at this, at the end of what he writes, and this is crucial to understand everything that's going on today. Everything. The debt ceiling debates, the tax increase debates, all of it. It's crucial. It's crucial to understanding who you will or will not support in the Republican primary and for President of the United States. It's crucial to understand what's happening to your society, because this is the choice between liberty and tyranny, and the choice is today. You can't put it off till tomorrow. These people are aggressive, and they are in full attack mode, and they are attacking our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. Nothing less, nothing more. Finish mopping up this guy. Richard Stengel, managing editor at Time magazine, says a constitution in and of itself guarantees nothing. Bolshevik Russia had a constitution, as did Nazi Germany. Cuba and Libya have constitutions. A constitution must... The idiot doesn't even realize he's proving the point. Those entities, Bolshevik Russia, Nazi Germany, Cuba, and Libya, they are what they are even with constitutions because they don't follow their constitutions either. Because they're used as political expedients. Because they give the central authority all kinds of, or they seize all kinds of power. He doesn't even realize that he's making our point. A constitution must embody something that is in the hearts of the people. He said, in the midst of World War II, the great Judge Learned Hand gave a speech in New York City. He said in that speech, it was a dark time. Now, here we go. What do we mean when we say that, first of all, we seek liberty? I often wonder whether we do not rest our hopes too much upon constitutions, upon laws, and upon courts. These are false hopes, said Learned Hand. Believe me, these are false hopes. Liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies, no constitution, no law, no court can even do much to help it. Learned Hand proves our point. We have a constitution not to have an all-encompassing government, but to protect our individual liberty and rights that are not given to us by the Constitution, incidentally, but by God Almighty. The false hope is in government. The false hope is in government. I'll be back.